So now we're being asked to factor completely using trial and error. I'm going to go ahead and write this trinomial back down over here. We have 2a squared plus 5a plus 3. Now we can go ahead and write, we know that looking at this leading term, what values will multiply to 2a squared? What are the factors of 2a squared? Well, 2a and a. We know they're both going to be a terms and are binomial. So we know that one of the a's has to go with the 2 because the only factors of 2 are 2 and 1. So we know, let's go ahead and write that down, that our leading terms are going to be 2a and a. So now let's look at our trailing term, our last term, our constant. What are the factors of 3? Well, they are 1 and 3. It's a prime number. And it goes without saying that we first would check this for, is there a greatest common factor? There is no greatest common factor. 5 and 3 are prime numbers and they're not even. And 2 is also a prime number. And then a is only in the first two terms. It's not in the last one. And then we also know that before that even, that it's already in descending order. It goes from a squared to a to the 0. So those are the first two things we would check. Is it in descending order? And are there any greatest common factor? Is there any greatest common factor? And in this case, that would be no. So then we look at the factors of the leading term, which again are 2a and a, and the factors of the constant, which are 1 and 3, and then we look at all possible combinations. So let's go with first, our first term times our first term and our second term times our second term. So in other words, let's test 2a plus 1 times a plus 3. Well, that gives us what for our middle terms? We already know our trailing terms are going to be, our constant is going to be 3, and we already know that the leading term is going to end up being 2a squared. We're only concerned about that middle term. So 1 times a is a, and 2a times 3 is 6a. Well, that gives us 7a. That's not what we want. So we know this isn't it. So what about the other combination? The first times the last, or the first plus the last times the second times the first. In other words, 2a times 3 times a plus 1. So let's try that out. 2a plus 3 times a plus 1. What's our middle term going to end up being? It's going to be 3a plus 2a times 1 is 2a, which thankfully is 5a, which is what we're looking for. And since it's plus plus, we know that this is going to be plus plus, and that's going to give us 2a plus 3 times a plus 1. And to check that, we can go ahead and multiply back through. So let's use the distributive method. That's going to give us a times 2a plus 3 plus 1 times 2a plus 3, which equals 2a squared plus 3a plus 2a plus 3, which equals 2a squared plus 5a plus 3, which is what we started with. So that verifies that this is the factored trinomial.